This is Greg Canty here, and welcome to the Win Happy podcast. Stay tuned for interesting chats with interesting people about winning their lives and being happy at the same time. This show has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. Thanks for listening. On today's podcast, I chat with Cork City Football Club legend Gearoid Morrissey about his career and his life. On part one of a two-part podcast, he chats about his early career, the joy of playing football with friends, and the excitement of being able to fulfil your dreams of being a professional footballer at the highest level in England. Arsenal, Derby, West Ham, Southampton, Liverpool and Blackburn, they were all interested in this young, talented footballer from Cork. However, at 16, you were just a boy, and when you don't have your friends and family around you, the joy of playing football can quickly disappear. Let's hear from Gearoid. Gearoid Morrissey, a huge welcome to the Win Happy podcast. How are you doing?
Great, Greg. Thanks a million for having me.
We've been trying to organise this for a small while, but we got there in the end.
Got there, yeah. Exactly.
We had a few weddings and stuff to go through in the meantime, so we got there. And a big congrats to Kevin and Sherelle on their big day, which we all enjoyed.
Great day, yeah.
It's the Win Happy podcast, and I think I couldn't think of a better guest. You know a thing or two about winning.
We had a couple of spells right, but I know an awful lot about losing too, so
there's no need to talk about those parts.
Not yet anyway.
Yeah. It's a huge topic, really. You know, you're a local boy who ended up winning the top trophies with their beloved local soccer team, Cork City Football Club. 2017, you did the double, which is amazing. And I think in a chat that I had with you, it was particularly emotional for me because my dad used to take me to all the Cork Hibs and the Cork Celtic games. You know, leading me by the hand down to Turnus Cross and down to Flower Lodge. And suddenly, when I came to the end of his days, I took him to those Cork City matches to watch us winning the league.
Excellent.
Yeah, and that last game when we finally actually clinched the league with yourselves, and I know it was kind of it was a long time coming towards the end. You know, you just needed a point or two, and there was a whole series of draws, and it got a bit frustrating, but I remember the particular match, there was huge storms, and I think one of the stands had kind of come down a bit, but the game went ahead anyway, and we had to park a good bit back from the stadium, and I was walking with Dad, and I know a lot of the kind of street lights were out and stuff, and there were trees down everywhere, and it was kind of weird because as we were walking towards the stadium, he was kind of grabbing me by my arm, and I thought, Jesus, talk about a turnaround from the days when he was holding my hand going to matches. And
yeah.
I just kind of realised how feeble he had become. And to be, it was a bit my fault as well because I'd parked a bit too far away from the ground. And Dad was colossal, like, you know, at this stage now he was 83. He was still going to the Mardyke gym when he was 80. And, you know, he had a bout with cancer. Remember, he went to the doctor after one particular operation and the doctor was telling him, you need to take it easy now, Michael. Don't be doing so much. So Dad's first question was, okay, yeah, I'll take it easy, all right, but can I go back to the gym? The doctor was blown away that he was even going to the gym. And within a few months, he had passed away. But those memories were absolutely precious. So thank you.
That's what it's about.
That particular night was special. Pat Dolan, and I know we were having a chat with you about that, our former manager. I was sending him messages and he actually came back to Mum and Dad's house after the game. And on the way back, and it was probably a bit of a tradition that I'd say you probably did with your dad when you were younger, that you go for, you know, a takeaway on the way home. So we got the fish and chips. I sent Pat a text, will I get some for you? And of course, there was no saying no with that man. And he joined us after anyway, and he had a lovely time. And he came in and met Mum and Dad and all that kind of stuff. So there were really good memories. I want to do a little bit of back and forward with you, if that's okay. That day when you landed into Blackburn as a 16-year-old, the first day turning up with your kit and everything else, the first day of training. Do you remember it?
I do remember it. Yeah, it was. It wasn't pleasant, like, because I never wanted to leave home. You know what I mean? It was my parents and everyone in the community at the time. It was a very big deal, I remember, and everyone was saying, like, it's something you have to do. You can't be turning down these opportunities, and so I never wanted to leave, and I suppose the gravity of the situation kind of, like, it made me do what I had to do almost, and I remember rocking up on the day, and it was all alien to me. Like, even though I'd been on trial now in a lot of football clubs, but the fact that I turned up and I had my stuff with me, and it was a one-way ticket, I was like, this is not it's not what I wanted to, even from then I was like, it's not what I want to do here. Like, I don't want to be living in England. So even when we went down, met everyone in the digs, and they can't be nicer because they know it is a daunting experience. But I remember they were showing us around, and we were picking rooms and stuff like that, and they were showing me where I'd be staying. And I remember just, as soon as I got into the room and we locked the door and I was to unpack, I remember it wasn't even a conscious decision. It was just the fact that I just never unpacked, and I lived out of my suitcase for about, I suppose, until all the clothes were out and they needed to be washed. And the landlady maybe put them in a drawer for me or something, but that must have took about 6 weeks until everything was out of the suitcase and gone through the wash and put in drawers, like, so I actually never even unpacked. It was a situation where I wasn't given into the fact that I no longer live in Cork, surrounded by my family and my buddies, and that was really, it was a harsh experience, because I remember just always feeling like very uneasy the whole time because I couldn't accept it, and in hindsight now, looking back, I kind of wish I didn't accept it. And I stayed here in Ireland till I was maybe 18, done my leaving cert, then maybe made a move. I think that 2-year development there is massive. And the fact you're going over and you're 18, I think it's huge. You're going over there as an adult, and the world opens up to you as an adult. Whereas when you're 16, you're limited, and then you've all these strange people who you've never met before really coming in, and they're kind of making decisions for you. So that was very tough for me. With my own mum and dad, they were kind of giving me a bit more leeway. I was getting 14, 15, 16, and then all of a sudden it's all taken back, and you're kind of controlled. You have to be as well. It's for you. The discipline is great, and it's for your own good, and in the long run you do benefit. But it's very hard for a 16-year-old to comprehend all this. I just felt like there was taken away from home, like in my head, and all these new people around me and a new group of lads that I had to make friends with. It's an extremely daunting experience. I actually wouldn't wish it on anybody in that sense, because it comes out as a negative. Whereas if you kind of go about it in a different way and maybe a bit later in life, it's a completely different experience. It's a huge positive,
Because you had the opportunity of going to Blackburn or Liverpool.
That was it, yeah. And I turned down Liverpool at that time to go to Blackburn because they'd offered my parents a house for 6 months or whatever, or it might have been 9 months, could have 6 to 9 months, something. It was nearly a year anyway. But I was going over there kind of under the pretense that I could live with them in this house, and my girlfriend at the time, who was now my wife, was going to be staying there, and she kind of made the move half and half because of, she was going to go schooling over there. My sister went to school over there. I went over there thinking that we were all going to be there living together, but that quickly changed, and kind of negotiated. Then every Saturday night I could stay with them. But that was the main reason I said no to Liverpool, which in hindsight now, looking back, I didn't get to stay with my parents anyway and my family. So I should have probably, in hindsight, went to Liverpool and seen how that turned out. But same thing, like I said a minute ago, I think it was 2 years too soon for me.
What was the rationale for not having you living with them?
It was, do you know what? It was kind of the fact that they needed me to be there to, get amongst the lads and, the team spirit and all this kind of stuff, which is grand, but it's a development system you're going into. So in the long run, as long as they produce a player for the first team, I don't see how you know what I mean? I don't see how winning trophies at youth level or anything is that significant. But I remember there was another guy, he lived in Lancashire, but he refused to move into the digs. Obviously, he was 30 minutes from the training ground, but he refused to move into the digs. And they left him off with it. And he stayed at home. He came in every day and trained, went home every day. And I remember the jealousy from me. I was looking at him thinking like, I could be doing this, but it's just not allowed. And the rationale was part of that. And then the fact that I came over from Ireland, the settling in period, as they were saying, is they needed it to happen quicker. And me staying with my parents, it wouldn't have sped it up. They think it would have slowed it down, which if they knew the type of guy I was, which is obviously tough for them, they don't know, so they do have to treat everyone in a certain way, I suppose. But it would have definitely benefited me. I feel like I would have been a lot happier, a lot quicker, and progressed and kicked on a little bit more in that 6 to 9 month period of living with my parents, my then girlfriend, and my sister. I'm my girlfriend, my wife now.
Yeah, and that first day rocking up for training, were you all buzzing, or were you half doing it for everyone else?
Oh, I was just completely for everyone else. I had, like I said, that feel. Sport, it's very much mental. Like you can't have especially as a 16-year-old, it's different as when you become a professional and you get older. It's different. You can put things on the back burner, and you know how to do your job and just get things done, and then deal with whatever needs to come in life afterwards. It's as an adult, it's a bit easier, but as a 16-year-old, you can't park things. You don't have that, the compartmentalization skills there where you're like, right, I'll park that there, I'll deal with it after the game or training. You don't have that. It's just your mindset is very much who you are and how you carry yourself at that age, especially
Yeah, and the player that was having fun on the pitch with Ringmahon Rovers a few months before that, was that player a lot different to the player who was, running out every day, training with Blackburn and playing matches and everything else? Was the player different because of how you were feeling?
Yeah, 100% I was. I knew I was up to it. My ability and how I was as a player. I trained with these lads in trial training sessions and matches leading up to me moving to Blackburn. So I knew I was well able, and I knew I was at the level, and they knew I was at the level to be there. But when I turned up, no, I'd say it wasn't until the summer. It was 3 months to the summer break with the academy. You get to go home. You get to go home for the 3 months or whatever it was, or get to go home for 6 weeks. And that came into my mind. And it wasn't until then, that last 3 months out of nearly a year being there, whatever, was the first 3 months I'd actually started performing, because my mindset shifted from not wanting to be here to actually being like, right, I'm actually going home in a couple of months. Might have been 2 months, but whatever it was. But I was like, I have something to look forward to. And I remember we played Sunderland. Conor Howard was playing. I grew up. I was playing. Got a lot of trials with Conor, and he was there. So he was playing with Sunderland. I was with Blackburn, and we won 3-2. I scored 2. Following game, I can't remember who it was, but I scored another one. And then there was another 1 or 2 games where I really performed. And Gary Boyer was the youth manager at the time, and he had to make a decision on 4 players to move from the academy to the first team building, which is up the hill, completely different setup, where the reserves are and the first team players are. So he had to make a decision at the end of the season. For the last 3 weeks of our season, we'd move up there to train with them to get used to what it was like, so we could come back in after the summer break in July and get straight into training with the reserve and first team. So only for them, I put about 4 good performances together. And myself, Grant Hanley, Phil Jones, Josh Morris, and Jason Lowe. There was 5 actually. Josh Morris came in on the back of it. We all went to the first team building, and there was players who outperformed me all year because mentally they were there, they were happy. And then I showed something in 4 games that they were like, right, we actually have something here. Let's get him into the first team setup. And that was only 4 games of a whole season that I actually done anything. And that was purely down to my mindset. So I look back on it and loads of regrets about it, because I could have, hindsight's a beautiful thing. I know it's as you get older, but I take a lot from it now going forward. But looking back at it, it's a bit sore with me. At grand, it's just when I think about it and get into it with myself, I kind of go, if I only changed my mindset a little bit and just kind of got on with it a bit more, I could have actually been a first team player for them, because we were training with them and stuff. But to answer the question, I suppose the kid who had the mindset with Ringmahon to the kid who had the mindset in Blackburn, they're night and day, to bar the last, like I said, the last 4 games, I was back to being that kid playing with Ringmahon for 4 games, and it was enough to give Gary Boyer a reason to put me up training with the first team and reserve team,
And the coaches who were working with you every day, they must have seen that change in you from, the kind of kid who was playing within himself to suddenly a kid who was expressing himself properly on the pitch. Did anyone ever talk to you about, that mental side, how you're feeling, how you're settling, and did anyone give you a chance to talk about missing the folks and maybe the dig setup wasn't the best for you? Because obviously they'd invested in you and they were writing a check to have your folks over here and everything else. Do they just reckon, you're being soft if you kind of get into that kind of thing with players, they either have it or they don't?
No, to be fair to them, they did talk about it and they did get into things with me, but it was kind of action is what I needed. You know what I mean? I kind of needed to, like that when they set up with my parents and my girlfriend and my sister were living in the accommodation, they should have took an action then immediately, I thought, and been like, right, we'll get the most out of him. Let him get through this spell. Leave him live with it. We were 15 minutes from the training ground. There's no harm. Leave him live there. He can have his dinner every night with the lads, the players in the academy, and then leave him go home after all that's done. I had enough time with them, but it wasn't to be. They talk you through it, and Gary Boyer I thought was fantastic. He was a very good football brain, and look, he tried to be soft at me at times, and then he would try and harden up and give me the hairdryer treatment kind of thing, try and shake me up and snap me out of it kind of a thing. But it just wasn't working for me because I think I got to a point of I was so unhappy there that I didn't actually care. I never done anything, I never acted out in any way. It was just the fact that I was probably mopey, looking back, I say I was moping around the training ground. I didn't come in the morning bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. I'd say I came in, look, I can only imagine me at 16 coming in the doors every morning. I'd say I was, I wouldn't have been high-fiving fellas and, I said top of the morning, any of that crack. I'd say I was just down the dumps. So it must have been tough for them too to see the ability that I had and that I just couldn't see the wood for the trees. It must have been very tough. But then the training ground, the digs you stay in Blackburn, the facilities are fantastic. They're top of the range. As I said, there's an academy building up the hill, first team building. And I'm sure at one point that first team building was the best in England. You know what I mean? Up against, Melwood and Carrington. It was better than all these places. So I probably should have relished that. But, like I said, looking back now on the mindset and where I was, I couldn't really get out of that. But what I was getting to was the digs we stayed in. There was house parents there. It was almost like a dormitory setup. And it didn't suit me at all because on the weekends, all the British lads would be gone because they could get home within an hour or 2 or 3 hours, whatever it was. And then the Irish lads who were there in the reserve team, they were older, so they kind of had their own setup. And maybe they're living with partners and all the rest of it. So I was left a lot after the game on a Saturday. Some weekends I wouldn't see anybody till I walk into the training ground Monday morning, because the digs parents were there, but because it was a reserve setup, they weren't there to look after you as such. They were just there in case anything happened, So I could go a whole weekend and not talk to one person. So in that respect, I think the club probably they always looked at me. Maybe they should have looked at themselves partially in terms of, right, this setup obviously isn't going down well with him, and let's look into it, see is there anything we can do. And to be honest, looking back, I can't remember anybody particularly loving the dig setup. I wouldn't call it homely or anything like that. It done what I said in the tin, which was just house the lads for training, and it was ideal for British lads who could go home. But if you were stuck there over the weekend, looking out at the training pitches you spent all week on, that's mentally draining.
I want to totally wind the clock back, if that's okay. Where are you from?
I'm from Mahon.
Okay, and growing up in Mahon, what was life like at home and stuff? What did your mum and dad do?
My dad was Tyler, still is, and my mother was stay-at-home mum, so she was always there and my dad was at work. And that's how it went. And 2 brothers, 3 sisters, dog, it was great. I loved it. And going out on the road, all my buddies were there, next door neighbours, all my friends I grew up with. The minute you go out on the road and you hear a ball kicking about, you knew it was one of your friends, straight out and have the crack for the day with the lads out in the street playing ball. So that was it, And
you'd be playing ball all day and all night. I can remember those days, Jiggers. and you come in and the legs will be hanging off you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember at one point I used to bring my football up into the bed with me, because it kind of, like I said, so unconsciously, I suppose, made a decision. I love this. You know what I mean? It was like, without even saying anything, doing anything, I just made the decision in my head that this is what I love, and done it without a career in mind or anything. It was just the fact I loved playing football. You know, there was nothing to it, no plan or anything.
And in your house, in your family, the conversations at the kitchen table when you'd all sit down, what used people be talking about?
A bit of everything, you know. How me, all I remember talking to my mum and dad about was sport and stuff, and how I was getting on. And you know yourself, like, they chat away then with your sister or your brother. Like, you just zone out, like, you know. You wouldn't even, doesn't matter what they were on. Like, as kids, you don't tune in. Like, you could probably messing with my sister or one of my brothers or something, you know, having the crack. So with me, it was always sport, and it was you know, a bit of school, I suppose, but mainly sport. And I was in boxing at the time. I was involved in the GA, and then I did soccer. So there was enough to cover with me, and then school and all the rest of it, like, you know. So there was enough to talk to me there about alone, like, you know, to cover it.
And when you're in school and for whatever reason the teacher has lost your attention and you start daydreaming a bit, where do you go in your head?
Where would I go? Yeah, it was always soccer with me. I'd always wander off, like, whenever every class we were in, you could see the pitch, the school pitch, like, you know. So they were constantly thinking about, can't wait to get out there and have a kick around, and, you know, that'd be it really, like, dreaming off about that, or even getting out in the yard and PE time. You know, you just, you know yourself, you just kind of, you zone off into them happy places when the teacher's on about maths or whatever else they were talking, you know.
And Ringman, was that your first team, was it?
Yeah. There was a taxi driver, a local taxi driver, Terry Cummins. He was involved, he's a club legend, like, you know, he's a legend in Mahon for all he's done for Ringmahon, like, you know. But at the time, I didn't know him, even though I would have paddled around with his son and played ball with his son out on the road and stuff. He was kind of a different terrace, you know, if you will. I remember he dropped my mum off one day in a taxi. She was coming back from town, and it was my birthday, my 9th birthday, and I was out on the road playing football, and he called me over, and he was like, Mum was obviously telling him, you know, he's loves it, like, or whatever. And there was no team for me at that time. There was no age group for me. So all the lads that I hung around with were 2 years older than me. So I remember him, he said, look, we're training tomorrow, and bring your boots, come way down, and we'll see what we can do, like, you know, just to accommodate you in some way, like. And, like, I had no team, anything like that, so I was getting my stuff together. Couldn't believe that I felt like I was called up for Ireland, like, you know. It was dreams come true for me, because all the lads used to go training. I couldn't go with them because I was 2 years younger, and that was, you know, they'd follow that in their head. Then they're like, oh, you can't come, like, the lad's telling me this is 2 years older, like, you're not allowed. And I took that as gospel. Then I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, so I'll leave it off. So I'd stay on the road on my own while the lads went training. So when I got the call to go down, absolutely elation, like, you know. And Terry, in fairness to him, brought me down, and you know, I became one of the best players there then. And then my own age group develops, and they came. So, but I used to see the team that I was 2 years older playing with them as my team. But then when I used to go down and play with my own age group, I thought, like, this is just me helping out with them. My real age group is here with the lads, like, where my buddies play. You know, so that was great. And, you know, Terry brought me through all that, and introduced me to Ringman Rangers, which is you know, something I forever be grateful to him for.
Yeah, you enjoyed those years, did you?
It was magic. It was magic. Just going from playing ball on the road with your buddies, finishing school with them, straight down to Ringmahon, training with them, coming back, staying out on the road playing another bit of ball. Sure, like, it might as well have been Disneyland to me. Like, you know, how happy we were there, you know.
Yeah.
It was absolute the best of times, yeah.
Who were your soccer idols?
I always had Zinedine Zidane. I could never. My dad loves George Best, absolutely. I mean, like, more than anyone. Like, he cried when George Best died. Like, that's how much he loves him. You know, it was like a death in the family to us. We couldn't, you know, we were all, you know, nearly in tears. But my dad definitely. And he introduced me to Pele and Maradona and all these, you know, and coming up. But just when I got a glimpse of Zinedine Zidane with Real Madrid that time, sure, he blew my mind. I couldn't. I was fixated on him, how good he was and the stuff he would do. So we'd be out on the road, then just anything we seen him do. That goal he got, the volley from outside the box into the top corner, trying that like morning, noon and night, just, or when the ball comes down and he kind of controls it like with a bit of a Cruyff turn, trying all these things. So we were fixated with him, I'd say.
And was it fairly obvious you were head and shoulders above some of the lads you were playing with?
Yeah, I suppose it was, looking back now, in school and then down Ringmahon. I excelled quick. At that age anyway, it's kind of like, it's the fastest and the strongest players, particularly in Ireland. Changes in Spain now and stuff. It's very much the technical player, because they know there's a developmental phase that's going to happen, and they kind of don't worry too much about the speed and the power and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in Ireland, it was very much the fastest and strongest players were the better players, because you just kick the ball in behind and they'd get onto it before anyone scored a goal. They looked great, So, and I was strong, I was fast, but I wasn't the strongest and I wasn't the fastest. So I think the fact that I was kind of able to stand out amongst the fast and strong fellas was kind of, and do very well, and score as much goals. And like I said, lads were 2 years older than me. So I think that really stood to me, and it probably gave, when people found out my age then, when I was playing, I remember I was on trial at Blackburn, and I went over with Conor Hourihan, and two of us were there, and he would have been 9 months older than me, but he would have been a second year, or going in as a second year, where I would have been going in as a first year, but they thought the two of us were second years. And I remember then Steve Nicks, who was the head of the academy or whatever, he, when I told him my age, I can remember the reaction on his face, that he was like, feck it, we've another year here with this fella before we can even take. So it was like, it really stood me in good stead, and I think that's how I kind of realised, like, I must be doing all right to say that, holding my own with 2 years older and standing out,
And as a kid growing up, that must have made you feel really good, did it? Like when your peers admire you, and there's the guy who'll help us to win the game and the guy who'll get the winning scores and all that kind of business. That must have felt good, did it?
Yeah, I was going to say, when you said about the peers, that was the main thing. The way the lads used to really, it made school very easy for me, in terms of, like, it can be hard to fit in and all that. It made it very, very easy for me. And looking back, like, at the time, you don't really know why. You just think that everyone's sound, and it's just, everyone's just having the crack, and this is how we all are. But looking back, I can see the path was made a lot easier just by being good at sport, and you'd have a lot of friends and stuff like that. So, and you'd be popular with it, because even if a guy didn't like you, the fact you were good at sport, they wouldn't never tell you they didn't like you, and they'd always be your friend, because, like you said, you scored a goal, or they want to be part of the party too. Like if there's a celebration or whatever, So yeah, it felt really good. I can remember feeling happy all the time. So it definitely paved the way for me big time.
And the notion that it might become a career for you, and when scouts were coming to look at you and all that kind of thing, was that all just part of the fun of it, or was there a point where it felt a little bit serious?
It was all part of the fun, because like that, it just added to the hype of the lads saying, like, I remember one time I was going on trial to Arsenal, and I was up in the road playing ball with the lads, and my neighbour, Paul Higgins, who's now the chairman of Ringmahon, he was only involved in the club at the time. He was like maybe a kids team's coach or something. He was involved in the club, but he pulled up, or he could have been maybe older age group, 15s or something like that, if I can remember. But he pulled up with a letter in his hand, and he was like, "Here, look, we got that today from came in the post. Arsenal, big Arsenal crest on the letter now." And he was like, "They want you to go over." Like, and I remember just taking it, like, and being like, I remember seeing how delighted he was for me, and looking, kind of going, then showing the lads the letter before I ran in home with it. And there was massive hype. Like, it was like, he just got a letter from Arsenal. Like, it was minds blown. Like, it was like, what's going on here? Like, so it was part of the fun. The trials were great. I had a great time, and it was the best if they wanted to sign you, because they'd give you special attention. I remember being in Southampton on trial, and I was in the digs, and in the same digs was Gareth Bale, Theo Walcott. There was a couple of Southampton first team youngsters who were in around the first team, and they were only 17, 18. They were there too. But, I remember Gareth Bale was up and coming, and Theo Walcott was the main man. He was a huge deal in the club. Like, he'd finish a first team game and come back to the digs. You're just at a match watching this guy play. It was the championship at the time. See him come back into the digs and sit down with you in the room with you where you are having cereal and stuff. I remember just being totally blown away by that, and like I said, Gareth Bale was there, and you see where he went after that. I remember I was down and I was a small bit homesick, and Southampton wanted to sign me. And I remember like Theo Walcott coming in, and I was only watching him at the match. He comes over, sits down next to me, calls me over, says, "You want to game pool, play pool with him?" Just thought this is brilliant. Like, it's only when I got older I realised, like, I was on the phone to my mum. She obviously rang the academy manager, told him I'm a bit down. He rang Theo Walcott, said, "Look, go in and cheer him up a bit. He's down the dumps." So the trials were fantastic. When I went to Arsenal that time, brought my dad over. I went to West Ham, brought a good bit of my family over. I was at Derby. They were trying to sign me, and they brought my family, my cousin who I hung around with. They brought him over. So the trials were like, because you got to enjoy them with all the people you loved, and I thought they were great, and they were at the matches watching the trial games. But and then on the back of them, then when I actually got close to going, that's when I felt the seriousness of it, and the fun kind of drained out of it then for me, like,
Yeah, it wasn't you and all your buddies and the excitement of going back home and telling them what your Theo Walcott story and Gareth Bale and whoever else. So it's a different ball game then when you're suddenly over there and you're Todd.
Yeah, and the lads are getting on with their lives, and you're keeping up to date through MSN or whatever it was at the time, and but you just feel like even though you're doing a great thing, but you feel like you're missing out on what they're doing at home, like, So I had that for a long time, and I could never get out of my own head with it, and it took a very long time for it. I actually never really did, and hence then I kind of ended up relishing the opportunity to join Cork City, and because I was like, what, I couldn't even believe the fact that you can actually make like, I never really thought about it as an option that I could earn a living, play in Cork, and have everyone around me again. I was like, absolutely. I was like, why didn't I do this at the start? In my own head, like, so it was very tough for me, and I've a lot of regrets, but I've huge positives to take out of it, and I don't really ever look back at it, because like, I love my life, delighted with how it's going and how we're getting on, but there's definitely moments I wish I had the head on me now that I had, head on me now back then would have been a little bit different, I'd imagine.
That's the bloody problem, Gearoid. You see, we have all the gifts and the physical attributes, but we don't have the brain. And then when the brain is kicking in, the legs have gone.
The legs are gone.
So how did Blackburn come to an end? Was there a particular moment when you were called into the office, or how did that work out?
Yeah, Sam Allardyce was the manager at the time, and I remember, I suppose I was up in the first team building now, so that mopey young fella was no longer around a group of kids. Like, I was around all these type of characters, and reserve team players, and like I said, now 4 or 5 in my own age group, but not many. And they'll probably see every day, and they're probably going to the reserve manager, what's his story, because every aspect of you is judged. Like, they look at everything, if they see you moping around, like, and then you can get away with it if you're training really well, but you can't get away with that if your training isn't up to par. Like, then all of a sudden the whole lot of that becomes a problem, and they're like, so I'd imagine Sam Allardyce, if he's seen me, would have been asking what's his story, like, why he doesn't seem too, not that I was too mopey, that I would have been grand, but I know now, looking back at it, I definitely wasn't too outgoing, and I wouldn't have been too chirpy or anything. I was always at one eye on home kind of a thing. So I was never totally, like my dad always says, when you're in a room, be there. I don't think I was ever fully in a room once in my time in England, So I think you'd notice that. And reserve manager, they didn't have the same level of tolerance. I was still only 17. But they still didn't have the same level of tolerance that the academy staff would have had with you. They're used to dealing with a lot younger, and they've come across this situation a lot. It's their day to day. But when you get up to when it's about results and the rest of it, like, it becomes very serious, and understandably. So I remember the reserve manager, Ian Brunskill, and he was like, "Look, Cork were on the phone for a loan move. Roddy Collins was on for a loan move, and then he was like, look, you're not happy." He was like, "I can tell him we'll make it permanent." And I was just like, I didn't jump at it. I remember thinking about it, and I remember going back then ringing Sean McCaffrey, was the Ireland under-19 manager at the time. I rang him straight away, because I knew he'd always be on to me, and he'd tell you what he thinks is right and wrong, like, and he was like, "Look," he goes, "if it's going to get you back on track," he was like, "and you're going to be happy doing it, do it." He was like, "But don't," he goes, "don't do it like to come home forever kind of thing. He's like, you need to bounce in and bounce out, like. And then I was like, yeah, but in my head, I remember thinking, if I go, I'm not bouncing. And I remember I want to go and be there and I want to play there, and that's that. Even though to keep everyone else happy, like I said, the gravity of the situation and the potential, I suppose, I had to go on to stay in England and play at a higher level kind of a thing. That was probably, people were saying, listen, just get in, get experience, and try seeking you get back over quick as you can kind of a thing. But like I said, I got to Cork, I absolutely loved it, and I never had any aspirations of going back to England, you know.
So did they set you free in a way, did they?
Yeah, so they did. Like they almost, yeah, that's exactly what it was. They kind of only for but Roddy Collins, I imagine, for the phone call, maybe it might have came up a bit later, and maybe it would have been a move to another English club or something. But the fact that Cork were there and I'm from Cork, they were like, look, you're not happy, this is a no-brainer, go and do it.
Okay.
You know, so I'd say Sam Allardyce would have said, because I remember my first team or my reserve team manager went away and I knew he was going to see Sam Allardyce, and then he came back, and in the same day he told me about this. So I'd say they just came to that decision straight away, and he probably needed signed off by Sam Allardyce, so that's why he would have been involved in it in any way, I'd imagine, you know.
So the bounce into Cork City pretty much happened at the same time, so did it? Yeah.
And then I got into Cork City. I came home straight into Cork City, signed for Roddy Collins. And then it was, you know, Roddy's a great character. You know, some of the stuff we used to do, like, you know, just looking back now, it was fantastic and great memories. But the club was going through a hard spell. It was about to be liquidated, and it was on the news and stuff. So the people around me were kind of, look, have a look at this first, because it's looking dodgy. And then I remember Roddy being like, it's getting sorted. So obviously it's his job too. He was hopeful it was being sorted. And then I remember the day I was training with Cork City, and I remember the day I signed, my sister and her boyfriend drove me out to Cove, where the administration offices were, and I was to sign. And I got out there, and I remember Roddy saying, I remember, I went to Maryborough, where Roddy lived, Maryborough Hill there. I suppose he was like my agent at the time. Donald Cronin was his name, and he lives in Mahon too, and he really looked after me with all the English stuff, you know, stuff my mum and dad never seen before. You know, he went away and done his research and all the rest of it, like, you know. So he brought me out to Roddy Collins' house when I got home. Roddy kind of said, look, the club's sorted, we're not being liquidated. Obviously someone had said that to him, there's a backer coming in or whatever. And then I remember going out signing. My sister brought me out to Cove, signed, and it was a really good deal for me. I was 18 at the time. I was 18 when I came home, so that got into Cove, signed, and I remember getting home thinking, this is great, good money for an 18-year-old, life is brilliant. And it was about 6 o'clock, I got home, sitting there, the news comes on, and then it was about an hour afterwards, I suppose. 6 o'clock news, George O'Callaghan was on the 6 o'clock news. I remember him going on, just seeing him going, what's he doing, having a look, clubs after being liquidated. I was like, oh my God, here we go. Like, so that was my introduction to Cork City. I think it's a great story, you know, and something to look back on. And I often laugh at it, like, you know, the fact that the way it went. And then Tommy Dunn came in and they stabilised the club through Forest, and I drove on from there, I suppose from the ground up with him then, and we went on to have a few good times.
Yeah, so your first game at the Cross, do you remember that, do you?
Yeah, I came back with an injury and I was kind of nursing it through the pre-season training, and I remember Tommy Dunn was the manager at the time, and he was like, yeah, are you ready to play here? Like, it was a Friday. I'd only done one training session now since I got injured, you know. I got injured, was injured, came back, trained with Cork City, got injured again, the same injury reoccurred, and I was my back, and I was like, I'm not sure, we'll see how it goes. So in one training session, he was like, we're going to be playing. So I was like, oh geez, fair enough, like, you know, I thought I was well able, got on Limerick at home, across, it was a good crowd there, I don't know what it was, but it was a good crowd, and I was about 25 minutes in, and I remember the injury came at me, I gassed out, I hit the deck and taken off. I remember Tommy giving out to me in the dressing room saying, you should have told me you weren't ready. And he was probably right. I was naive. I was thinking, I'll be grand. Like, I've always been grand, you know, just throw me in, I'll be all right. I suppose men's football then as well, you know, and the League of Ireland it's very, the quality is not as high as what you might get in the top levels in England and stuff like that, but the speed is there, like, you know, just fellas will fly through you, like, and they'd be, you know, running. So I had that to deal with then, and So that was my first quick. I learned quick then to, right, I need to make sure if I'm going to step onto this pitch here, I need to be accountable. And I'd say Tommy didn't like me too much for a while after that. But then as he seen me, as I got back fit, trained, put a run of games together for him, we developed him there, and we had a great relationship, and he played me every week, which is all I could ask, as a player.
Yeah, and you got promoted as well, didn't you? From
we won
League
the first division then. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, we had a great time, and went on then. And John Caulfield came in, and we done a couple of good years with John with the trophies, as you were saying. Then a couple of great European runs that something that I always look back on fondly. Like him, John Cotter was there as an assistant, or a great guy, and we had some unbelievably good times. And like I said, all from playing, in front of your neighbours, if you will.
Yeah, and tell me, what possessed you to go back to England? You went to Cambridge for a while, didn't you?
I did. I had no intentions of it, as I said, but I felt like I was mature. I felt like I'd unfinished business in England, and it was League Two at the time, and Jez George, the CEO, and the chief scout came over. We played Pats, and I think they were looking at Chris Forrester, players with Pats, and I played with Pats, and they were looking at him, and I happened to score a goal in the game, and I had a really good game. We won. I can't remember the score now, but we won. And I remember then there was word of Cambridge, and I was just, I paid no heed to it. There's always rumours in football, and I went away then, and a couple of games later there was more rumours, and there was a couple of phone calls made, and Graham Barrett was my agent at the time. Remember him getting on to me saying, look, there's interest from Cambridge, and it could be a good move for you. He was like, they're a good club, and it'd be a good start back in England for you, and you could kick on or whatever. And I said, look, we'll have a look at it and whatever. Went over a few times, liked what I saw. It was all good, and then I signed for them.
I hope you can join me for part 2 of my conversation with Gearoid, where he talks about his successful career with Cork City Football Club, a short spell in England with Cambridge United, a debut against Manchester United in the FA Cup at Old Trafford, and eventually his decision to retire. Or is it just a breather? Thank you for listening to the Win Happy podcast, which has been brought to you by Fusion Communications. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to send me an email at greg@fusion.ie. So until next time, take it easy.